They know the truth, folks. I mean, we know certain things. We know the world is under attack. We know the people with small hats control a lot of stuff. But there are so many more questions. You know, there was talk years ago, even actually in, I think it was the Emerald Tablets. There was talk in the Emerald Tablets. I don't even know how much I believe the Emerald Tablets, folks. I don't believe too much of what's been written down. I think there's a lot of red herrings out there. But you've got things such as the Secret Covenant that actually Jeff talked about on his last show. And you just search for that, folks, the Secret Covenant. It tells you everything that's going on now. They say, oh, this is just a conspiracy theory. Well, interesting if it is, because it tells you everything that's going on now. But in the Emerald Tablets, and getting to the old world for a minute, one of the things that happened in the destruction of the old world was the removal of all the church bells, and not just church bells, bells. There were bells in a lot of buildings and a lot of towers. All of those little, hickeys that you see on top of old buildings had bell towers in them. And what were these bells used for? They weren't just used for telling the time. They weren't just used for marking off the hours of the day.
What is the apocalypse of the bells? Starting around the 1600s, there seems to have been some sort of worldwide decree to destroy church bells in places as far apart as Chicago and Tibet. During the German occupation of Europe in World War II, unprecedented confiscation and destruction of these bells took place. In Western Europe alone, over 150,000 church bells were melted down by the National Socialist regime. 90,000 of those bells were from Germany itself. The common belief is that the bells were required to be melted down for artillery, but in many circumstances the bells seem to have been simply destroyed, shot with cannons or blown apart with explosives seemingly for no good reason at all. There seems to be an entire mythology or perhaps an inside joke surrounding these bells, like the famous crack in the Liberty Bell or the hole in the world's largest bell, the Tsar Bell. What is going on here?
They tell us they were removed and melted down for ammunition in one of their many ill-fought wars at our expense. But what we were intentionally not made to realize is just how important these bells were in the old world. Churches, temples, buildings adorned with bell towers were not just idle places of worship. They were the healing centers of the old world, operating similar to the principles of the Rife machine, using frequency and vibration, a technology and capability known very well in the old world. Why would we be allowed such empowering freedoms? There is no profit and control to be had in a healthy patient.
There's talk in the Emerald Tablets that a lot of these bells were used for warding off evil spirits. There was talk in the Emerald Tablets how the earth had been overrun by a parasitic species. This is talked about in the Castaneda books when they talk about the predator mind, how the fact that humans are enslaved to a species that they can't really perceive, that operates outside visible light, that's able to take on human form, and it feeds from us. This is stuff that David Icke has talked about for years. It's stuff that the Essenes talked about, stuff the Gnostics talked about, the Nag Hammadi library, they talk about the Archons. This species that came from somewhere. Even the Australian Aboriginals talk about this race that lives underground, that actually controls human beings from underground. You've got the Africans talk about the Chitahuri. The Indians talk about the reptilian species, their snake brothers that they call them. American Indians talk about the snake brothers. You've got to wonder how much of this is true, but according to some reports, these bells used to create a sound frequency which would expose these creatures when they took human form or whatever. it's highly speculative, folks, but, you know, there's been so much talk about this from so many different directions. When you hear the same story coming from so many different directions, like I said, Australian Aboriginals, the Indians, the American Indians, the Gnostics, the Essenes, the Emerald Tablets, so many people talk about the fact that humankind has been overrun by a species that can look human but actually isn't. And then when you look at what's being done to the world and the amount of destruction and death and brutality and just psychopathic behaviour that's happening,